So yesterday when I opened the discussion, we talked about how in World War II, the industrial base stepped up. We formed the arsenal of democracy to build our way to victory. Right? We produced at a scale that was unknown for this nation before that. That success cascaded throughout the economy for years to come. It drove the engine for years. I want to poll the audience with some questions. How many folks directly supplied to the Department of Defense, either as a manufacturer or a technology provider? Can I get a show of hands? How many folks think they might be supplying, but they're not sure? One over there. Here's the reality. The majority of the United States industrial base, manufacturers, technology providers, universities, nonprofits, either directly or indirectly supply to the Department of Defense. When you think about it, soldiers wear clothes. If you're working in the garment industry, you may be providing that. Food, medicine, physical equipment. It's not only weapon systems. It's a lot that's provided. I met someone that was in the manufacturing industry of construction. They built buildings. And he said, this is great, but like, I'm not in the defense supplier. And I said, well, what do you do? He goes, well, I build barracks on military bases. And I was like, what? So I want everybody to recognize that even though today we've been talking a lot about the defense industrial base and meeting the needs of the warfighter, everyone in the industrial base is part of that answer. Okay? Keith said it during his session. So yesterday when I talked about also the industrial base and how that responded, I asked the question, if we need to be ready today, how could we do it? We're going to ask this distinguished panel in a second to do that. But I want to poll the audience. Show of hands. How many people believe that today, if we needed to do what we as a nation did 80 years ago, that we're ready to do it? That's shocking. It's not, right? We know there's still work to do. How many people think we need to be ready in the next decade to do something like that? All right, start dropping hands as I pull the date in. The next 5 years, so by 2030. How about 2029? 28? 27? Anybody know about the magic of 2027? If not, we'll talk about it. How many people think we need to be ready right now? How many people think it's too late, we're already playing catch up? All right. We're going to have a great conversation with this amazing panel. It reflects so many diverse backgrounds. You've seen it in the bios on their sheets. This is not a static panel. So I'm going to ask two initial questions, and then I want you all to jump in and ask your questions. This is expertise that is not easy to get in front of. They're here dedicated to answer your questions. But collectively, remember, this is about all of us doing our part to strengthen this U.S. economy through manufacturing that also will strengthen our national security. Okay, so to each of the panelists, thank you. And here's how we're going to start. So let's assume, based on the feedback, that we need to be ready now. Do you think we're ready? And why do you think that way? And then also just introduce you really briefly, who you are, what you do, what you work for. Okay? Alexis, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Well, as we said, hi, I'm Alexis Lasselle-Ross. I'll start with who I am. I spent about 20 years or more in the government, both on Capitol Hill and in the Pentagon, in a variety of capacities and different vantage points across the strategic or the policy-making realm of the defense enterprise, whether that was on committee staff writing legislation or an Army acquisition official or my last job, I was the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Secretary of Defense. Since moving into the private sector, I've worked at a large defense prime, one of the obvious suppliers, and now I have a small business. I run a consulting practice advising companies as they navigate through the selling to the Department of Defense. But I also stay very involved through a lot of volunteer capacities, advising both formally and informally a lot of Department of Defense leaders. And I also am on the MxD Board of Directors. So I'm happy to be here, enjoy these things all the time. So the question of whether or not we are ready for a war in the Pacific, and I would have to say the answer is no. And I'm going to address my comments based on because what it would need to look like, what would we need based on operational plans. As I said, I spent a lot of time talking with military leadership, and they are obviously currently assessing and analyzing what a future warfighting would look like in the Pacific and what that operational requirements would be. And they anticipate that a war in the Pacific with an adversary, a peer adversary that rivals us in economic, military, and technological features would be very, it would be long, it would be very lethal, it would not be short and sharp. It would be a existential, very demanding experience with a very high technological capacity. The supply lines to the Indo-Pacific would be, they would start here and go all the way there, very long distance, and they'd be contested all the way. And it's expected that we would expend significant supplies. So, ergo, those that would prevail in a conflict like that, it stands to reason, would be the side that can master continuous resupply. So, I don't think, we have not fully optimized our defense industrial base, or as Berardino reminded us, the broader industrial base, and I think that we have quite a lot to go to scale. So it's all about scale.
Joe?
Hi, everyone. First, thanks for being here. This is probably one of the most important national security topics in the history of our country, and it's happening right now, and I'd say 9 out of 10 people walking around do not understand how serious it is. So these are folks that obviously care about it. You're participating in it just by being here. So just very quickly on me, my name is Joe Musselman. I'm a managing partner of a fund called BVVC. And Bravo Victor is paying kind of tribute to my Navy roots, where Bravo flag flown from a ship means we're carrying dangerous things. And our country needs to carry dangerous things again. There's no getting around it. That's what deterrence is. Manufacturing at scale is deterrence. And the Victor flag means we need assistance, and typically from the outside. So countries can't do this alone. I decided to go into venture capital because the governments around the world need support from outside capital, private capital. We can amplify efforts. We can invest in things that matter. Most importantly, I'm a newer dad of a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. One just turned 4. So we talk a lot about getting things into the hands of warfighters. I would consider myself, with a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, a warfighter. I certainly would very much like to protect them and have them grow up feeling the same amount of safety that I had, which I don't think we do, or our children do by any measure. So when he asks us the question, are we prepared now, 10 years? No. We should have started about 15 to 20 years ago to match our adversaries, but we were very busy spending trillions of dollars abroad on a war and a conflict that lasted 20 plus years. And our adversaries were watching us do that. You know what they were doing? They were building advanced manufacturing cities across their countries. Just from a munitions standpoint, I'll quickly move on to my peer here, but China has 16 munitions factories of high caliber. If we got squirrely up here on the stage, paint our faces black and blew one up, they'd rebuild it in under 10 months. High caliber, forging steel. And America forgot how to forge steel. We forgot how to build factories as a stockpile. And that needs to stop immediately. So that's me, and that's what I do.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Joe.
Well, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Kusnierek. I lead Rolls-Royce LibertyWorks. That is an innovation hub modeled in the aerospace industry. We're heavily involved with the jet engine and propulsion world. And it's a fascinating place to live and work. I get to hear the sound of jet engines and smell jet fuel almost every day, which is really invigorating. Right across the street from me, though, is a 2 million square foot concrete pad that is empty. That is where our World War II factory was. So this question is actually, it's more or less I drive past it every single day, and it's an important question that has been asked. And again, I would say emphatically, no, the country is not prepared at this time. for that. Recreation of Freedom's Forge. I don't know, I think it's very important for us to talk in specificities. We don't need to produce the kinds of things that were used in World War II in totality. So we had 55,000 bombers produced in World War II. Height of the Cold War, we had 770. Now we have about 140. And we can talk about whether that's adequate. There are analogies, in ships, tanks, other kinds of platforms. But in World War II, there was no need for semiconductors. There was no need for software. And I would say you could probably scratch out cybersecurity as an issue as well. Today, those are all extremely important. One of the things that I pay attention to is, the World War II Freedom's Forge was really a story of adaptability. I think that theme is extremely important. So if you look at any part of the Ukraine war, the degree of adaptability occurring there is extraordinary. There are various studies and statements on that. I do like the story of the FPV drones that they use. These are quadcopters, not much bigger than a chair. In 2023, Ukraine did not produce any drones. 2024, they set out with a goal of producing and using 1 million drones. They produced 1.4 million drones and used them. This year, their goal is 4 million FPV drones. 75% of the targets that are taken out in Ukraine are with these FPV drones. What does that supply chain look like? How did they adapt? How did they move forward? I think those are all important questions for us to look at as a country. And that's just one example, FPV drones being a newer weapon system. There's lots of different aspects to a future conflict. Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, good afternoon, and I'm going to add my thanks to Joe's thanks for having you all here today, because it means you care. And this is something that's really important. But not only do you care about this particular topic and how our defense industrial base is, but you care about manufacturing. So I own a small manufacturing business, and I speak with a really loud voice. And I say that because my business, what we do, the size we are, the industries we play in, I represent 98% of the manufacturing base in the United States. And they all look just like me, more or less. So manufacturing for me is both a vocation and an advocation. I came to manufacturing later in my life. My husband and I decided to buy this very small manufacturing business 26 years ago. I'd already had a career, he'd already had a career, and we decided for a variety of reasons that we wanted to be manufacturers. We love to make things. And we could only afford a small business. We've been lucky enough to grow that business and be part of this manufacturing ecosystem. And part of that, the advocation piece, was we actively get involved in the manufacturing space. I've been on the board of the NIST MEP. I was on the US Manufacturing Council. I'm on the board of MxD. So small manufacturers need to continue to have a voice across all of these sectors so that our colleagues here and many of you understand what is critical to small manufacturers to allow us to be that supply chain that our defense industrial base and many other industries need. My business is comprised of about 30% defense activities. 70% belongs to the commercial sector. If I had to pivot tomorrow to go from 30% to 90%, and we've done it at times, we've had DX-rated projects that caused us to have to spin up more capacity for defense. It was not easy. But I will tell you that, now getting into the are we ready piece, I agree with my colleagues here. We're not ready now, but we are more ready than we were. So think about back to 2020, when our supply chains suddenly changed radically, when we had to think about if we, 70% of my commercial business stopped. What was I going to do with that capacity? How quickly could I pivot to use that for something else that was required? We are much more prepared today, and many small manufacturers hopefully got the message that they need to think about how can they be the supply base should we be in a position to have to turn that on quickly. So we're better off than we were. We're not there yet, but I appreciate the fact that, and you'll hear it over and over again, hopefully we are raising the awareness within the United States manufacturing base, most of whom are small and medium-sized manufacturers, that this is something that they really need to think about, care about, and be prepared for.
Hey, thank you. So I'm Jeff Frankston. I'm the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of War for Industrial Base Resilience. Some of you may have been here yesterday, so I'll try not to repeat too much from the conversation, but a lot of it is a similar point. So I oversee for the department our DPA Title I, which is our DX ratings and prioritization. I oversee Title III, which is what you normally think about for DPA purchases and procurements. I also oversee the Industrial Base Fund, which is a similar but a different pot of money and authorities. The other piece that I oversee is our studies and analysis and supply chain views across all of our different platforms and components. I mention all that, one, just to tell you who I am, but two, because it pertains to everything that you've already heard on the stage. So are we there yet? No. Are we on the way? Yes. I kind of lean towards where Mary was going, for a few reasons. We react really good as a country in crisis, but we shouldn't have to, and we need to be planning for that. So COVID is a great example. I'll also use JRAC as a great example too. When the chips are down and we need to do something because it's critical, urgent, and American lives are at risk, we react. Building that speed, building that urgency into our day-to-day is something that we are getting pushed for all the right reasons from our new leadership. Whether it's from a mobilization planning standpoint, whether it's from how we're addressing our industry procurements, everything that we're doing is trying to build speed and pace and scale because we know what's staring in front of us. You mentioned supply chains, you talked about FPVs. I did some Ukraine support in a prior life. Ukraine doesn't care where their supply chain comes from. That's right. China's killing people on both sides because they'll sell to both sides and make money from both sides. We don't have the luxury to do that. And so hopefully, per what Mary's comments on our supply chain, COVID may have shocked a lot of folks into reality about the brittleness of our supply chains and what we have domestically. And so hopefully that's changed the awareness standpoint. We can't be in a world where we are relying on our greatest adversary for key components, whether at the critical minerals level that I spoke a little bit about yesterday, or any of the other parts or sub-assemblies that go into our weapons system. So the actions that we take today are directly relevant to where we will be when the balloon goes up. We have a great, powerful military right now. The concern that I have is the endurance in a conflict and being able to scale and build and last and sustain. I know we can do it. We are on the pathway there, but it's going to take the collective efforts of all the folks that are in this room and then back home working together to drive our industry to be ready to flex for that scenario.
So I'm going to tie a couple of points. I'm going to ask one more question, then I'll let you guys have a chance. Don't worry, if you don't ask any questions, I have plenty of questions to ask, but I would love to get engagements from the audience. So Mary and Jeff, you kind of hit a point, right? We act really well in a crisis, right? The pandemic created a crisis in our supply chains, and we reacted to it. My worry is that we kind of, some people went back to sleep, and we're like, okay, thank God that's over. If we take the premise that the entire industrial base is key to our national security and economic prosperity, right? It's both a deterrence, but it's also an economic driver. How do we do today? What is the most important things, and I'm going to ask each of the panelists, the most important things that you think we need to do today to prepare ourselves ahead of a crisis as a driver so that we can be proactively responding rather than reactively responding? And I'm going reverse order, so Jeff, I'll start with you.
So I think it's some of the actions that we're already taking today. I look forward to hearing some of our panelists' discussions, but what I can share about what we're talking about internally in the department is this exact question. How are we ready, and what are the actions that we get to do that? And it's kind of boring and pedantic, but one of the best ways to do this is what are you measuring? What is your ultimate metric that you're tracking? I can't speak for our senior leadership, but for myself, it is deliveries of weapon systems. If the action that I am taking, if the resourcing that I'm putting into a project isn't increasing the number of missiles being bought or ships being delivered or airplanes coming out the hangar, then it's the wrong action, it's the wrong thing, it's the wrong focus. And so we have a host of work that's going to get us to this standpoint, but it's a criticality that we need to do it. So how you measure yourself, how you drive, this is where I'm doing for all of our investments. And so when we look at putting more dollars at the door to resource a particular capability or capacity, what is the outcome? Who is supporting that outcome? Which service, which prime vendor is supporting that outcome, whether at the lowest level of supply chain or at the highest level of, hey, we're buying more missiles. Where is the resourcing going? Who's standing up to support that? And then for our friend from venture capital, where's the outside income coming, or the outside funding that's going to come to turbocharge that investment so that we can build in that capability and capacity? And it's one of the messages I shared yesterday. Even if we're not, to use kind of Mary's ratio, 90% of your business and for 30% of your business, we are an enduring part of your business and is a requirement that is not going away. And so the dollars that you invest, the time and the people and the resources that you put into expanding your industrial base will be rewarded by steady work, and the need is only growing.
Great. Mary?
Thanks, Jeff, and that's very true, right? Our defense business could be larger. We choose to cap it at 30% for a variety of reasons, but it has been steady and it is good work. Not always easy, but good work. So my suggestion is, and I'm going to come from this, again, as just a manufacturer that has both defense and commercial business. I think OEMs, or primes if it's the defense contract base, need to invest more in supplier development consortia, right? So get together, bring your supply base, which are small manufacturers, together and work through supplier development activities, whether it's introducing new technology, whether it's helping them with a digital transformation, whether it is helping them scale, right? Figuring out what their next best investment should be, but help them be the best suppliers to you and be willing to put some money behind it. There are lots of ways to invest in development, and it could be workforce development for that matter, any number of things. But it's really, really useful when a group of large companies get together and say, who are non-competitors, this is what I need across my supply base. These are the kinds of capabilities, this is the kind of scale I need, and really help develop that. That would be my next best suggestion on how we could move up the chain faster.
So we're always trying to see a pattern, right? Identify what success looks like, how you're going to get there, make sure you know how to measure it. Your supply chain has to be involved collectively because no one can do this alone.
Yep.
John, your thoughts?
Yeah, I really piggyback on the metrics piece. I would expand that out just a little bit in terms of a national security objective might be to deter conflict, or if conflict happens, when, okay, what was the military and industrial capacity that led to that outcome? And then what are the actions, which include substantially on the finance side, what's required to build that capacity? I'm going to loop back to there was a story here earlier in this summit about in 1991, there was the Last Supper. Fundamentally, the US government has spent the last 35 years optimizing the industrial base for cost efficiency, not capacity.
Yeah.
And so if there's a metric or set of metrics, most likely on capacity, that will close the loop, that will bring in, I think, appropriate business and finance aspects to address the problem with some confidence.
Maybe say what the Last Supper was.
Yes, so the Last Supper. So let's see here. Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and so there was considered to be the peace dividend. The Secretary of Defense held a meeting with all of the large primes at that period of time, and there was a very substantial consolidation in the industrial base.
That's right.
Yeah.
Before Joe, you jump in, because I think John set you up well. One of the questions is, John, 35 plus years creating the current situation, can we change it overnight? Or is it going to take a sustained time?
That's right.
Right?
Well, can it change overnight? What's the?
Yeah, it's kind of sarcastic comment, but
No,
it's
of course.
it took a while to get here. I think one of the challenges is it's going to take a sustained effort to fix it, right?
I like the 10-month story.
Yes.
Factory, 10 months. What does that look like? And again, the specifics, there was artillery shells. There's an aspect of that, but more broadly in the jet engine business, for example. What would take? Go ahead.
Joe?
This is for those of you in the audience, this is a wonderful, well-thought panel. So I want to thank you for that. All of us, team MDX, I want to let you know we have folks represented from Federals, we have primes, we have the folks that are making the things, machining the things on the ground. Fabricating, thank you. Huge difference, so I'm sorry. And people that are funding things and finding clever ways to finance things on the grounds that need to be funded based on what the Pentagon believes to be 13 critical must-win categories of tech. And then we go out and we find the bleeding edge. And then we have folks that are sitting with and consulting every single day what the problem sets are and how we're supposed to solve them. So I was the 20th man in my family to serve in the United States military, going back to our revolution. History is very clear, and what we're seeing here in World War II, you could look back at World War II, and at that time, the United States government could turn to massive manufacturers and said, we need your help, right? And they could actually help. We don't have that anymore. We forgot how to forge things in this country. We forgot how to forge steel and build factories very quickly. So at that point, 90% of my portfolio are founders and entrepreneurs that are building things in the physical world. You could go and touch them, right? Everything from drones that are not coming back, everything to drones that are, to ISR drones, to gather technology, to things like Anduril, to Figure, advanced robotics, watching humanoids. You know there's going to be 1 billion humanoids walking the planet in the next 5 years. So how is that going to change life? Well, I'm trying to find these things and finance things that are a little bit around the corner, right? And the whole purpose of our fund is I come from a community called Naval Special Warfare. And what we have, the way that we think about things is, it's kind of so goes the development group, so goes the SEAL community, so goes special operations, so goes the DoD, so goes the rest. That's a kind of an internal joke. It doesn't actually work that way, but we'd like to think it does. But point being, there's stuff around the corner that we have to pay attention to that our adversaries are doing now. And then there's the immediate need, things that the warfighter needs in their hands right now. Half of my fund are active duty operators that come from tier 1s, meaning SEAL Team 6 or Delta, ODA, and so on from Special Mission Unit. Our conversations are quite lively about what the war fighter needs. And yet there's also something happening in Ukraine, and I forget where the statistics was, what we were talking about specifically in the Pacific. We run out of one-way things in less than 30 days, based on the China Commission. So just think about that. If we were to get inside of any type of conflict right now, we would run out of things that don't come back within 30 days, and they would be able to resupply. This is a problem. Extreme vulnerability is what forces companies to be made. Our extreme vulnerabilities is what forced our founding fathers to form the nation, right? We are born and bred of entrepreneurs. America is an entrepreneur by nature. And so for me, it speaks to my personal story and professional story to go out and fund and find and follow on with founders that are really building things that are interesting for national security. However, when I read a white paper in 2023, December, I'll never forget it. It talked about the state of the energetics enterprise between the United States and our allies. It was terrifying. Toxic supply chains, Chinese powder being labeled as Vietnam or Indian, coming from different places from all over the world that we don't do well with at all. watered down. It doesn't fly as far. It doesn't go as, it's not as lethal. It's not packaged correctly. They're exploding in barracks all over the country. This was a big problem. And then I woke up and I read the year that it was published. It was published in 2019. So this is pre-Ukraine. Madman invades Ukraine. It's pre that situation. It's pre the atrocities of October 7th. It's pre the tensions in the Middle East. It's pre the submission of Afghanistan back to the Taliban. This is all pre these things growing up and building up right beneath our noses. And so when I went to go find a founder that was building factories to solve this problem of a 5-component munition, I don't have to be a rocket scientist to do a Google of the deficit of the 155 munition. All right, 82-pound steel shells, 5 components. No one can make it. A lot was actually discussed about why they don't make it anymore. So I went to market, I invest in founders, I find them, I fund them. I could not find a single founder that wasn't trying to kind of skirt the real work. We have to build factories. There's no way to do this. It's a steel shell, it needs to be forged. It's a process. You can't hurry the cooling and heating of steel. Long story longer, this was, let's see, we formed the team in September of 24. We formed the company in October of 24. I went to market, raised $52.5 million in 30 days, opened it in 30 days, closed it in 30 days. Then we went to work. We had to build a very complex line. One of our near peers, who we always hope wins, one of the major primes, they've spent 36 months trying to build this line. 36 months and $700 million of American taxpayer dollars, by the way, and yet no first article sample has been produced. We were founded as a company in October. We went to work, got keys to a 300,000 square foot factory in May, launched the factory in July. We'll be at first article sample within 6 months of July. We get a forge press. We'll be the first privately backed company in the history of our company, in the history of our country, to have a 1,250-ton hydraulic press sit in a venture-backed company to do what? To forge steel. And what we are learning along the way has been absolutely remarkable. But it goes to show you, we call it prime time. Right? Defense prime time, what they say it takes and what they say it costs. And then you take a scrappy team from Anduril, Tesla, NASA, MIT, some of the most brilliant engineers in the world. You give them a problem set because the munition is not the problem. The stockpile is being depleted, not the problem. We have no factories to build them. So we have to build factories as a stockpile. That's the model. This country doesn't know how to produce factories quickly anymore, and we're trying to solve that, where the product that we are making as a company at Union is the factory. The factory is the product. So the munition is askew. All I could say is SpaceX, their rocket, all right, can be built in 8 days. It has 58,000 components. The 155 munition has 5. And no one can build this, and yet a space ship that goes to space, come back, and lands itself can be built in 8 days. So what really inspired the engineers was we have to learn how to build factories again to build themselves. How do we do that? That was the problem set that got their attention.
I'm excited to hear your story. I like listening to it because it's very familiar to me. So for the folks in the audience, I sat on the Army Science Board, and the Secretary of the Army at the time asked us to look at munitions production and why you couldn't surge.
Current or past? Which one?
Secretary Wormuth.
Okay.
And so this was right after the industry, the sort of slow, lagged response to production of 155 and many other things. So in this summer of 2023, we put out this study. And so to answer your question about what we could be doing, I like hearing everything that you're doing on the sell side, the supply side. Obviously, every equation, there's supply and demand, there's buyer and seller. So what can the DoD be doing to make for better business environments for folks like yourself and others that are attempting to solve this problem? Much of the problem that we have today, I believe, is because, and this is well documented in the Army Science Board's report, much of the result is it stems from the DoD's own buying patterns and how it operates within the space. And so some, I think, simple and actionable things that the DoD could do to try to get ahead of this and start reversing the trend are things, obviously we've all heard the term consistent demand signal. It's becoming incredibly popular right now. But how do you actually achieve that? It is not just programming stuff in the budget. It's not having senior leaders talk about it, because in the end of the day, that's just pablum, and a budget can be reversed, and it often is. Really, you have to have dollars on contract. You have to actually execute those orders. And to try to smooth out that inconsistent demand signal, a smart tactic is multi-year procurement authority, which means buying things over many years and committing to that, versus the annual appropriation cycle that only comes out and dribbles once every year. And when it comes to production of things that need to be surged, obviously, it's not about developing the end item and letting that thing sit and atrophy on the shelf somewhere. That is not advisable. But consider the individual long lead items that are within that, the various components that need to be, that are difficult to procure. I personally like the idea of the factory as the, what did you?
Factory as a stockpile.
Steal that one.
And building that capacity, as long as you have the workforce. It's not just the factory, the facility, but also the workforce. So I think we should talk about that, because I know Mary's got some opinions on that. And then finally, advanced manufacturing. I think the Department of Defense could be doing a great deal more to incentivize its vendors, from the OEMs down, to invest in these things through a variety of things like weighted source selection criteria, accepting digital prototypes, changing testing so that we'll now accept and certify and qualify things that have been developed through advanced means. So I'll get off my stage.
Well, but Alexis, you're absolutely right. That consistent demand, as a business owner, the consistent demand signal is the key, right? We all know manufacturing is capital intensive. There are lots and lots of businesses that you can start up tomorrow, but you don't have to buy a $2 million laser and a $500,000 folding machine and right? So in order to own a manufacturing business, you have to invest a lot of capital. You do that, either you win the lottery, or you realize that you're going to eventually be able to recoup that investment. So I was talking with a young man yesterday who said it very succinctly. A lot of times these programs come out and they ask you to bid on them, and they say, we guarantee you an amount between $200,000 and $25,000. How do you make a decision when you might only be making $200,000, or you might be making $25,000, or maybe $25 million of something, right? So that's the challenge. I think it's using the lens of the supply base to understand, what do we need? We all want to step up. There isn't anybody in this room that I can't imagine that isn't patriotic and say, if called upon, I'm there, right? Or I'd like to be part of that and feel like I am being, doing my American duty. But it's very difficult to think about doing it in a sustainable way if you don't have some of those guarantees.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to interrupt, because this was my desire and my fear. Y'all are so passionate about what you do, but we're ripping through time like crazy. So we are going to open up the audience for quick questions, but I also want rapid fire answers from the panel so we can get through a lot of different things. So we got a hand over here and a hand over here. Whoever's faster with the mic gets the first person. Oh, Brian won.
I got
All
it.
right,
Check.
go ahead, sir.
So earlier this month, Secretary Dan Driscoll went on Fox News and let everybody know that the Rangers are using their credit cards to test equipment. And you almost touched on it just a little bit, but acquisition is a problem. The FAR is a problem. Like, that is not a technology issue. So I'd love to hear what you all have to say about it, because I think that's the number one preventative thing that's happening right now.
So I'm gonna make the audience aware. Jeff works for the federal government. I'm sure he has a million opinions on this, but he probably can't say anything. So I'm going to turn to the former government, unless, Jeff, you could say what you could say.
I can say a few things, and then I'd love for Alexis to chime and tell me where I'm off. 100% agree. 100% we see that. That is being changed. So what I can say is, for the conversations on particular portfolios, as an example, we are trying to knock down those barriers as quick as we can. Something just kind of riffing off the end of the last conversation. Some of that might be upfront budgeting and sustaining of budgeting for surge capability capacity. Asking for it after the fact, asking for it once the balloon has gone up and you're trying to surge like 155 is a challenge. And so we're looking at how we can put that into our contracts and then pay for that. It's not just, hey, I need to go do that and it'd be great if you could do that, but also resource and make that a contract requirement so that the winner that puts, or the bidder that puts it in the contract wins that contract, not just the one that didn't and it's cheaper. So we are trying to knock down some of that regulation. It's not an easy thing, but I sit literally across the hallway from our contracts office, which is spending a lot of late nights on how to modify the DFAR, modify our requirements to move faster.
All right, let's take the second question.
Yeah, thanks. I just quick show of hands. How many have ever listened to Dwight Eisenhower's farewell speech about the industrial complex in the U.S.? Okay. I don't mean to pick on you, John, but I think that whole Last Supper of 1991 is an indictment on the industrial complex, and I think it's failed us, as evidenced by Joe and his innovation. Because what all that created, and if you just look back into history, it created monopolies where basically the government had no place else to turn for a next generation fighter.
Best intentions, worst outcome.
Yep, exactly.
Best intentions, worst outcome.
Exactly. And so who is really the change agent that's really going to drive the fundamental change? I mean, we see basically what Elon Musk, he's basically made NASA almost extinct in some respects. So who's driving that change in the defense? Because, when we looked at World War II, we had like probably an 18-month runway to build up. And in the next big war, you're not going to have 18 months. You may have 18 days.
That's right.
Yeah.
So is there somebody in the change agent at Washington that drive?
I think it's an easy answer. There has to be a forcing function, and the Chinese get a vote. The country will have to do something, will have to adapt. So it's almost like the World War II adaptation story, but obviously fast forwarded some 70, 80 years. But that's what's required, and that is happening. That's, I think, part of the message here.
I do believe that we are in a period where there is great alignment. Well, first of all, bipartisanly, everyone understands that China is an actual threat more than we did, maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But there's an alignment between industry, the Hill, and the Department of Defense right now for some significant change in acquisition. I did acquisition reform back, as it was just becoming cool. I worked for Mac Thornberry in the House Armed Services Committee, and then I went over to the Army in the first Trump administration, and I was doing acquisition reform then. It is now, and I'll tell you that there was some great progress getting the ball rolling. There is dramatic change right now, to the gentleman's point before about what's happening in the Army. The Army is sort of, in my opinion, leading the way on some dramatic change in not just its organizational structure, but its methods. And so there are a lot of things that are underway, actually.
I just wanted to I heard incrementalist. I heard incremental thoughts from everybody except for Joe and her results. I think that's where we need to get to.
That's kind of you. I understand, like these two perspectives on my right and left, they are really bound by, red tape is an understatement, and they're trying to cut through as much of it as possible. I sat with these people on the Hill for the last 12 to 15 months as reconciliation was coming out. But here's what I can say. Results are important. The demand signal that she's talking about, important. We just happen to be going through the largest restockpiling effort in the history of the world right now. Right? Border countries like Latvia, Slovakia, Poland, they are tripling, quadrupling budgets. For me, this is why venture is so exciting to me. On all my report cards as a kid, it says Joe is very risk-taking, and he tries to listen once or twice, but not really, right? So for venture, I'm like, look, if we build it, they will come. But we've got to build it first. So let's fund it. Let's follow on with it. That opened up a whole other spectrum of how do you continuously finance things outside of equity when you have no track record as a company. JP Morgan, I sat with Jimmy Dimon, I put a real ask for him. I said, sir, this can't be a non-answer, because he's really good at those. I said, sir, you have access to the highest net worth people in the world. You run the largest commercial bank on the planet. Why are you not forming clever vehicles for them to participate in low interest, no interest, low interest loans, vehicles, CapEx financing, project financing, machinery financing? Why are we doing this? To his credit, in 10 days, we got a deal from JP Morgan as a partner where they will fund basically 18 to 24 cents of every dollar of equity we raise moving forward. They'll back it by JP Morgan, and they'll give it to us in a financing vehicle for CapEx with a very long-term tail end. It was a wonderful thing. But until, when you ask, this is to get to your answer, the problem is going to solve from the top down, bottom up. It's going to meet in the middle at some point, which I hope is very soon. But never underestimate the power of a founder that is obsessed, maniacal, and willing to do anything, specifically sell to our allies. Right? When JD went to Europe, it was like, no more for you. Right? Came home, it was one of the best things we could have done for foreign policy. NATO, 2.3 trillion additional dollars being spent throughout Europe to finance things that they need. But it's also opened up the doors for foreign military sales for our startups here to start selling great product to the Europeans. So in one single move, there's all this stuff that happened behind the scenes, and we may not have liked the way that it was done, or we could have used different words to do it. These are our partners and allies, yes, of course. But now it's opened up this entire new industry, both for Europe and for the United States startup ecosystem, for national security builders to feel further incentivized to go build great technologies for both the United States and our allies. It was a wonderful thing that happened. Now we have to go build.
All right, my team's already started mutiny, but we're going to keep going until they pull me off the stage.
Yeah, no, we've got like a few more minutes.
Oh, I was going to take 15 more. So. All right, more questions. Let's keep going, because this is all seeds, right? We're planting seeds in the conversation.
Yeah, hi, Michelle from Naval Sea Systems Command. And so I'm speaking, coming from the Navy part of it. So we have a very, very aging fleet, submarines, aircraft carriers, all of our floaters. And coming from, I work with all 4 shipyards, and the problem is not standing up. All the manufacturers that have supported these aging fleet have disbanded all of their capabilities because there's no profit for them. So what we're left with is we're constantly cannibalizing from each ship to try to keep them afloat. Our 6 to 12 month upkeeps are turning into 3 to 5 years because there's no supply. Wow. So we are a non-for-profit, so it's really hard to get the U.S. manufacturing base or even some of our allied partners to support these aging ships. And that's what I think we really need to look at too, because we want to all go for these shiny, cool things. We are producing, the next generation of these ships that are all digital, but our shipyards are not prepared to even receive them. And we're trying to, very quickly get to that point, but we run into so much bureaucracy, red tape, with our cybersecurity concerns and all that kind of stuff. But we are asking our employees, these wrench turners that are aging out of the system with all this cardinal knowledge of these archaic ships are leaving, and so we're losing a lot of that ability to quickly turn something around. So we need to look at it not just as in the supply chain also is what's our plan for these old boats, and start standing up some of these facilities, or we're also working towards AM capabilities and printing some of these parts and all this kind of stuff, but we're definitely behind the curveball more than 5 years. And come back to your point, 15, 20 years, because we're a lot of our boats are past their lifespan, and we're keeping them afloat because we're not keeping up with China with producing a ship a year. It's taken us many years to produce something. So I guess I don't really have a question per se for you guys. It's more of a comment, because I'm sitting back here and I'm like, okay, I live the 4 naval shipyards, and these guys out in the Pacific, I'm on the West Coast, and I really want our borders, water borders protected, and these are how we're going to do it. So just wanted to throw that out there.
I'll turn that into a question, because it ties into the things that John and Joe had said. So Ukraine, drones changing the battlefield, but 155 shells still were heavily used, fired out of guns that were designed for a Korean War. Right? So B-52, John, I know Rolls is involved in keeping the B-52s in the air. these are aging equipment that we have to maintain while we're trying to adapt to this new warfighter. To throw in the mix, majority of U.S. manufacturing is cutting, bending, or welding metal. Like, how do we balance with the new shiny that we have to go invest in, but we don't forget the fact that we still need the traditional manufacturing. We got to strengthen it. So rapid fire, please, because we do want to get some more questions, but quick thoughts on that from some of the panelists.
Yeah, my view is we absolutely have to go down both tracks. Either one, a weakness in either one will present a vulnerability. So the exact form that will take, I'm not sure. But I don't view this as a don't support the current aging whatever fleet and simply transfer our priority to newer, shinier things. I think it has to be across the board.
And I would just say, as the manufacturer on the panel here, both are happening, right?
Yeah.
So in my facility, we have a lot of traditional cutting, forming, welding. We also have a lot of automated activities that are happening, and they happen side by side. It is actually an evolution, and as I believe that's also going to happen with, whether it's ships or airplanes or whatever, there will be an evolution. Eventually, all the new stuff will replace all the old stuff. We have to think really hard when we move an old piece of equipment out of our facility. There are certain things that equipment is the only equipment that the new stuff doesn't do that anymore. So how do we transition that stuff to the new stuff? Because we don't want to invest in that one anymore. So it is happening. It does happen. The other thing is about people, though. It's really interesting. I was giving an example earlier where we hire most of our skilled tradespeople out of technical college. So they come with some degree of learning about new advanced systems. I'll take robotic welding, for example. And then we have a lot of tradespeople that have been in the trade, and these guys are craftsmen. They know how to build stuff, anything. But they don't know how to run the robot. They don't know how to program the robot. And so you take this young person right out of school, you connect them to somebody who really understands how parts are made, and you get this incredible knowledge transfer back and forth. That's how the evolution is going to happen, right? We're going to get there. It is not as fast as we would like it to be. It's probably not as fast as we need it to be, but as long as we understand that it can happen and we need to keep it happening, I think we can do something about that.
Yeah, I lived in San Diego for 15 years. I looked at those fleets every day going over the bridge. And our country, in that regard of watching these things, we are in elegant decay. So we have this elegant structure that was put in place. And over the years, go down 55. When you drive around Chicago, drive down 55. You will see beautiful factories in industrious space that are rotted, rusting, spray painted. They're next to a river. They're next to a major highway. They have butt up against rail. This is happening throughout the country. I think, unfortunately, what I have seen with building this company in 8 months, if you were to aggregate the value that's been created from a market value perspective, it's about $1 billion. The union will be valued at about $500 million. It's just by building a factory, we've built 4 other companies as a result of deficits that we've seen in very simple things that we don't need to out-innovate the battlefield right now, but we do need to make things effective and efficient for what we're going to fight. A great analogy was, it's like a World War II battle on the ground in Ukraine in a 21st century air operation colliding. And what would happen in China would be a 10x of that, all within a matter of time and space. So, point being is, until we start actually digging in and sitting with manufacturers and understanding where the problem sets really lie, I don't think we're going to innovate new businesses that can come out and solve problems while we solve problems for folks that are also innovating on the ground day to day.
If I could add one thing, and it relates to everything, and then something that we talked about earlier, it gets the demand signal. Until we are a better customer and actually showing steady increasing demand, we're not going to engender new players into that scenario. I will say, from a new entrant or from a mobilization, yes, we have the 4 public yards. Yes, we have the big 5 of the top tier shipyards. We are seeing innovation. We are seeing investment into the mid-tier, whether it's in multiple parts of the country, but it's also going to be things like at the lower tiers. So Chicago Bridge and Iron during the war built landing ship tanks. That's going to be how we're going to have to innovate. Do we have less of a base to build from? Absolutely, but it's things like what DARPA just did with the NOMARS platform, putting an unmanned ship out to sea, built at a very, very small shipyard in Oregon. It's going to be things like that, where we're converting yacht builders and smaller yards into building, whether it's an unmanned drone or some other type of small naval platform. We have an urban air mobility movement to build air taxis that somehow at some point might actually happen. That could be some of your aviation pieces. So there are things that we don't think about from a defense standpoint that are out there that can be converted, but we have to be better customers from the department at driving that demand signal and showing that beyond just talk that there's dollars behind it, and we are doing that.
All right, question in the back.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you guys. This has been an amazing event. First time I've been to MxD. My name is Russell Winter. I'm a third-generation tool and die maker. My calling in life, besides being the best husband and father and friend I can be, is to unite the small manufacturers of this country into a unified workforce. I'm interested to know how many people here are small manufacturers, like with under 60 people. Raise a hand. There's a couple of us here. A few of us.
Yeah.
They're all at work.
And shout out to Union and the other Russell in manufacturing.
Oh yeah, Russell is
Roan.
the true wizard. Yes.
My question is, what is the government doing to try to help the small manufacturers get into the DIB, or save the ones that are falling out of it?
Jeff can take that.
Yeah, I mean, so we had a conversation yesterday, and so I'll give some love to my sister organization. So we have an Office of Small Business programs that runs things like the Apex Accelerator and a number of other programs. They are matched by what our research and engineering brethren have through the CIBER program. So there are things that are out there, but a lot of it is us showing the demand signal to connect those smaller companies with venture, with other, maybe it's an international customer or player, and to say nothing of a larger prime on understanding what's out there. So we have a major job to do to not just maintain the programs and expand the programs that have been out there to bring those entrants in, but to actually give the workload to them and show that there is major war-winning capability that this small company could be supporting. And that gets into the speed and scale of our ordering that we need to do and are working at doing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely worth a follow-on conversation. In the interest of time, I'm going to give one more question to the audience, and then I want to give the panel a chance to wrap up. Dennis? Oh, nope.
Yeah, hi there. Will Smith from Action Engineering. Thank you, panelists. This has been a great conversation this afternoon. So my question is, over the past couple of days, we've talked about some pretty interesting challenges for U.S. manufacturers. How are our adversaries not facing the same issues we are? Or if they are facing them, how are they solving them? And Joe, you gave an example early on, like the advanced munition factories in China. If one got destroyed, it would be rebuilt in 10 months. Yeah. Like, why aren't we doing that? Or what are they doing special that allows them to accomplish something like that?
Well, folks keep thinking, when folks think on why we abdicated our role as kind of a titan of manufacturing to the Chinese over the last 50 years, they think about it as price. It's cheaper. That's like something that immediately comes to people's mind. Has very little to do with price, has mostly to do with labor. They have a labor force that they have been training to do just, you say you're a third generation manufacturer. They have 6, 7, 8 generations of manufacturers. Now, mind you, the wage gap is significant. Okay, that's a whole other fifth in a fire conversation. But right now they have the labor, so they can manufacture things, whether they're big or small, quickly. They have vacant cities of manufacturing sitting there, empty, waiting to be turned on. No one fears the United States turning on our factories anymore. Yet I do fear them turning on their factories if we were ever to get into a conflict. A friend and a colleague and a peer, his name is Shyam Sankar. He's the CTO of a company called you probably all hear of it, of Palantir. I've known Sean for nearly a decade. I've known Dr. Corp for nearly 15 years. The way that they integrated their software is the way that we need to integrate factory deployable engineers to small businesses to help them ramp up manufacturing at scale. We forgot how to manufacture at scale. They did not. Think of it in the terms of events. Throughout history, the Romans forgot how to build the aqueducts. The Egyptians forgot how to build the pyramids. We forgot how to go to space. It took an entrepreneur to sue the government for not getting fair treatment for a contract, to then go to space again, nearly going bankrupt, now has created one of the most valuable businesses in the history of the world. And then we forgot how to manufacture at scale. Like, we have to bring the labor intense back. So what you're doing is a calling. You are fighting for national security with what you're working on. Every small manufacturer in this country needs to think that a part of them, whether they're building something for the government or not, are a part of the national security solution. I don't run a defense fund. I run a national security fund. Those are two very different things. When people think defense, they think just things that go boom. It's not things that go boom. We have to be able to build things again in this country, and it's what we will learn. Everything in your iPhone right now was powered by technology that was founded by going to space in the Apollo missions. We didn't know that, all right? We didn't know that this technology was going to be in cellular devices to talk to people in different countries within 50 years. So what are we missing out on? The opportunity cost of not building in the direction of national security. Remember, the first Silicon Valley was in fact the DoD. So let's be clear that all of that talent that ended up in Silicon Valley, they were early three-letter agencies, supporters, enablers, builders, doers, technologists, engineers that happened to go to Silicon Valley because this is where this was the heart of where technologists were landing. Where is that now? So COVID taught us a great lesson, that we can be displaced in different places and spaces, and we can still do amazing things. Founders think of a time by ourselves with no inbound and like, oh my God, like we could just stay at home and work. We never saw more entrepreneurship than after 2020, 2021, 2022. We had a huge spike in new companies formed and new companies built. You can check the Delaware registry on that. So the point is, what they've done is they've been very consistent. They've been telling us what they've been doing for nearly a century. They have a 100-year plan. We have a 4-year plan. Every 4 years, everyone kind of takes a deep breath and figures out, okay, where does all this settle in, right? New administration, new focus, new attention, all of this. It didn't used to be about who was in that office. It used to be about who was building things on the ground. It used to be about the American people. This is all very obvious. We all know this. I'm not saying anything novel. All of you are sitting here knowing that what I'm saying is true. But we have to reinvigorate the base. And that starts with people that are actually building things right now. That's what I choose to invest in.
Joe, I'm going to take that as your closing statement because that wrapped up a lot of the ideas that we had chatted through. Jeff, any last thoughts? Rapid fire.
Listen to what we're saying here today. This is a demand signal that is not going away. I can very truthfully tell you that I get dragged through a knothole on a daily or weekly basis on how to go faster. Our department is listening. Our department is moving, and we're talking to everyone that you see represented on this stage from various sects and communities. So if there is something that you want to share with the department that you are working on that has got a way to move faster, we are interested in hearing it.
Mary?
Call me Pollyanna. I believe it's going to happen. I firmly believe that the U.S. manufacturing base will rise to the challenge, but we need to invest now. We need to start making significant changes now. One of the most important things is to have a strategy. You know, I love the ideas that Joe has, but if it isn't linked to some kind of a consistent strategy, we're all going to be pulling in different directions, and I don't know that we're going to have the impact that we want to, and I don't know that we're going to gain the scale in the right things if we don't have a consistent strategy around it. So I think we need strategy, I think we need scale, and I think we need education, but I believe that the United States is the best country in the world, and that we will get there.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think the fundamental adaptability of the United States as a country during a time of crisis is really fairly unique in the world. I think the supply chain issues we've been talking about, capacity issues, are a crisis. I believe there is a reaction on which is ongoing. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Alexis?
I think a lot of this, the lies of the Department of Defense. I do think that it needs to take action, and there is, in the absence of that, in the absence of strong action, what we've seen is the emergence in the private sector of new ways of doing things, which is good. And I think the department is waking up and realizing that it's a little behind, and it's going to start joining forces with, private capital, entrepreneurs, and a variety of other sources that weren't there prevalently before. So I think that the trend is looking up, and I think the department's got the memo, and I think it's moving out.
This is the start of the conversation. Clearly, we should have booked 2 hours for this slot, but can we give a round of applause to our panelists, please?